YellowTelescope's YellowTelecast, the best practices for the best practices, providing the medical industry's best practices to the medical industry's best practices since 2008. Are you a doctor? Do you work for a doctor? Do you want to earn more, be more efficient, retain your team, hire for success, or just want to have a better lifestyle? I bet you do. What should you expect from the podcast? A lighthearted, casual, fun, hopefully funny, informative, impactful, well-founded look at the medical industry from a pair of passionate, competent, confident, experienced, talented, questionably good-looking, unquestionably good-looking industry leaders, men of the Renaissance, if you will, and even if you won't, who enjoy Scotch whiskey, world travel, music, single malt Scotch whiskey, fine dining, not fine dining, family, art, and Ryan bourbon whiskeys while implementing intensive training and expert staffing, resulting in unparalleled growth. Listen to the podcast, and for more on how Yellow Telescope can help you grow, visit YellowTelescope.com for upcoming events, published articles, recorded speeches, past issues of our complimentary email newsletter, testimonials, and more.
All right. Should we, how long has it been?
Too long? It's been too long.
How long has it been?
I think it's
3 long.
Several long. I don't know. A year?
Feels like a year.
I don't think we did one this year.
May I?
Please. It's got my name in it. We'll do a bit about that later. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
That was a bit heavy on the board.
Oh, I'm really gonna have to go.
Friday afternoon.
It's gonna be a short podcast. That's true. It is Friday afternoon. That much I know.
How's this? Here? That's pretty good.
Sort of here, lovely. Shall we?
Cheers.
What is this episode?
Welcome back to the Yellow Telescope, YellowTelecast, Best Practice for the Best Practices podcast. Episode maybe 20-ish?
I think maybe 20-ish.
Cheers.
It's good to be back.
Well, it has been a while, Ed. I think, as you noted, it's been the better part of a year since we last posted, which is unheard of. Luckily, for good reason, we've been busy.
Oh, yeah.
Building businesses, building practices.
That's right. Building each other up. Doing good things for the world. Doing what we love to do.
Yeah, I think we went to at least 10 or 15 cities that we were planning to actually do a podcast in, and we went over 10 or 15 due to various other fun. We had planned one for Vegas, didn't get to it in Vegas.
No. Well, it's tough. You know, we're always in a different city, and then all of a sudden you get there, and at the very end of the day, you loosen the tie, and you're like, okay, great. Should we be on for another hour? No. The answer is usually not.
Well, in my case, that wasn't so much of an issue being on all the time, but still, everyone wants their rest, and there's so much fun to be had.
And you still got to save some for a client dinner. You know, we're still going to be on.
Love a client dinner.
But this is actually kind of a special one. It's being filmed right around sort of the holiday time, just shy of the new year. So it should be, about January, when this is actually going live.
Happy 2019, everyone, from back in the past, 2018.
That's right. As you can tell from the setting, we are deep in the wilderness in Fargo, North Carolina. Dakota.
Nah.
No.
Really neither.
Really neither. Neither?
It's hard to know at this point.
At this point, of course, we kid. For those of you that are listening to us, you should be watching us on YouTube so that you could really take in the resplendent view behind us of the Gulf Stream, which is aptly named the town that we're actually in here, speaking to you from my mother's home here in sunny South Florida, where we don't feel bad for ourselves in December. So, we are here. We figured it would be a nice opportunity to do a little filming, catch up a little bit on the year, talk a little bit about next year. Of course,
got some planning topics I know planned for today. We've planned through our planning process to talk about planning today. At least that's the plan, but we'll see. But it's nice here. Thank you, Casey, for hosting us. Very exciting. You get your first shout out on the Yellow Telescope, YellowTelecast, Best Practices and Best Practices podcast. But yes, in the back we have our old home, which is to say that I lived in the Palm Beaches for about 3 years post-college, West Palm and Palm Beach Island. Ed here grew up in the Boynton and Del Rey area, the vicinity, Boca Raton, if you will. Honestly, right. Even if you won't, and most of us won't. Most of us are going to get out of there, but it's a decent place, yeah. No. Not so much for me, for me, but for maybe others.
Yeah, and it's good to be back. I try to come up with some regularity. It's just a short jaunt up from Miami, and particularly around this time of year. And so, yeah, we are going to be talking a little bit about planning today. We are going to be talking a little bit about marketing specifically within that planning. We're going to talk a little bit about some whiskey. We're going to play a little golf.
A little bit.
Just a little golf over maybe a little whiskey, maybe have a little dinner later on at the little club.
Conversation, yeah.
At the little club.
Where?
So, At the Little Club.
What's the Little Club?
That's actually the name of the club where we'll be actually playing this afternoon. And
I've heard a little bit about it, but tell me more.
Oh, it's the world famous Little 9 and Dine. So we're actually going to play a full 18. Of course, it's a par 3, so that's good for both of us.
That's why they call it the Little Club, is that it's not a lot of members here, under 300.
Correct.
And every single hole, even though it's a very, very interesting, sort of prestigious and oft sought after place to hit some balls, every single hole a par 3. Very exciting.
Correct. So we'll see if we still got it. I think I lost it. I may never have actually really had it, even though my father was former president of the club, and so I've got a lot of golf in the blood, just not necessarily all the way out through the fingertips.
We doing a buck a ball today? What are we doing?
We'll see. It's discouraged, but something a little under the table. We'll see.
Hey, how do you do? Little.
No problemo.
Got it. Little. Got it.
Should we talk about the whiskey first?
Let's go ahead and do so. It has been a great year, and we're celebrating our first podcast back with a great whiskey. We, if we may, not so humbly brag just a little bit about our year. We're really proud of the team. We've grown by a lot. I think we have 5 new employees since we last posted a podcast, approximately. Excited to have them. Ice Cream social media continues to grow. SE Oversight continues to grow, and Yellow Telescope does as well. It's been a strong year. We were really excited because we had applied and kind of knew we had a good chance, but didn't know for sure. But we have actually been named for the first year ever for our first national award, which we're celebrating with this fine whiskey, which is also worthy of national and international awards. And that award was Inc. Magazine's 5,000 fastest growing companies in America, which is pretty great. We came in the top 3,000, and we're going to try to win again here in 2019. So that was exciting, and we thought somewhat prestigious. And then we also won for the second time the 50 fastest growing companies, I think under 25 million, in South Florida. And we came in last year at at number 15, and this year I believe we won number 7. So we're moving on up. So we're excited.
Yeah.
So it's been a good year. We won a Good to Great Company Award by the
Greater Miami
Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
Only 3 companies at different levels won. Recognized 3 or 4 years worth of continued growth. Total Bank won, Spirit Airlines won, and then Yellow Telescope LLC, SE Oversight and Ice Cream social media won. So that's pretty awesome. So today we are celebrating. Actually, we celebrated about half the bottle at our Christmas party just a few days ago,
and a subsequent. So because it's rocket fuel, you can only have 1 or 2 of these, but we spread it among a number of people within the company.
Yeah,
so.
for those of you out in podcast land, and particularly YouTube land, if you're watching it, you can see that about 3/4 to a good 4/5, if not 5/6 of the bottle are gone, but we did not knock that out this morning, which is why we're fully coherent and articulate to the nth degree. With that, we have the Edrador. If you haven't had this one, I strongly recommend it. And guess why? Guess why it's one of Ed's favorites?
Because it's got my name in it.
That's right. It's the Edrador. That's Edradour. Delicious. It's technically a Highland single malt whiskey, although really pretty close to the whole Speyside kind of area. Kind of right on that whiskey trail. It's about a 75-mile kind of area with a lot of really great distilleries. And this is one of the smallest, tiniest distilleries in all of Scotland. What they're really known for is not actually what we have here. They're known for taking small batches and putting in all kinds of different woods and things, Cabernet, Sauterne cask, sherry cask, this cask, and always making different interesting things with their distillate. This one, however, is the natural cask strength, although it is sherried, thus the dark sort of caramel rubyish color that goes with it.
It's rich.
It's really rich. It's a 2004, which means it's a 14-year-old, which is kind of an odd age statement, but anything with an age statement these days is very exciting. And it is truly rocket fuel, Ed. Do you happen to know what it might be?
I believe it. It's funny. It tastes around 55.2% alcohol.
Wow,
Is that?
That's exactly right.
Did I nail it?
So this is a 110.4 proof whiskey. Drinking it neat. To give you an idea, your vodka, your Grey Goose or something is 80 proof.
Sure.
Rum is 80 proof. This is 110 proof. And this was one of 2 Edrador bottles that we imported from the UK, because I just can't find it in the States anywhere.
That's right.
For our holiday party this year. And this was the less boozy of the 2.
Yep.
By a good margin. The other one was over 60% alcohol.
But remarkably smooth, especially considering the level of alcohol.
And for those of you guys in the elective cosmetic space, it's great. You just rub a little on your tattoo, boom, you don't need the laser at all.
Right.
Just
melts it right off.
Melts it right off. So,
in a pinch, local anesthetic.
but this is absolutely delicious. Let's do one more try before moving on to actually teaching something on this podcast.
Shall we?
Smooth as lotion. Really, really delicious. Strongly recommend this particular one. The natural cast strength Edredure 2004 14-year-old. Just caramel, banana, vanilla, wood in heaven. I don't know.
Yes. A little bit of spice on the finish. It's nice.
It endures. It edredures.
It edredures. It's edreduring.
Well, I know that we're going to be talking a little bit about planning today, and Ed's going to kind of take it away because he really kind of spearheads a lot of this process for our business and has been doing a little bit of planning of his own. And one of the interesting things that segues from our from whiskey into planning and marketing is that we made a decision, I guess about 6 years ago, that we were going to have a holiday party once a year. It was going to follow our annual planning meeting, so we'd plan all day somewhere off-site. Once we had the planning meeting, we would go maybe over to Ed's house traditionally and invite the whole team over, and we'd do a whiskey tasting. And some people just have a soda or water or wine or whatever else it is, but people like whiskey would try the whiskey because that was a little bit of our brand and something that we were passionate about. And so we decided the first year to just do nothing but the letter A. So we had an Aberlour, we had an Angel's Envy, an Ardbeg from Isla, and so forth. And then the next year we did B, which I think was Ball Blair and
Balvenie, Bunaheiben.
Bruichladdich, which was a great year. Well, E was not so easy, by the way, because we're on the E year. Next year will be F. And so A, it forces you to plan. So we had to literally import whiskey from Scotland to basically get past Evan Williams and Elijah Craig, and I think one oddball one from Canada to find 3. This is the only Scotch whiskey made with an E.
That's right.
So it took a little planning, and it's also something that we planned 5 or 6 or 7 years ago to create a tradition, and it's kind of got legs now. It's kind of fun to think about the year of the F. Now, we don't know what we're going to do when we get to the year of the X.
Yeah.
Q might be questionable too.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of Gaelic Qs.
It's going to be interesting. I'm really interested for the Z whiskey. We'll see where that is. Maybe how about this? If we distill one now and we name it with a Q, then it'll be matured.
When you think about the whole process of distillation and creating age statement whiskey, it all kind of takes planning, doesn't it?
It does.
With that, I present Ed Searing, Executive Vice President and Partner in Yellow Telescope as the oversight and ice cream social media.
Cheers, John. Thanks for having me. We also thought it would be very appropriate as well, since we're hitting the links a little bit later today, and while we did have several whiskeys
I thought we just wore pink polo shirts pretty much every day together. Is that not our whole thing?
Well, I mean, we are matchy-matchy. I think we're known for that. But no, I think it was mostly because we found ourselves up north of Miami, here into the Palm Beach, where we're actually going to be playing just a little bit of golf. As we
I look the part.
Oh, yeah.
Tried to put it together today.
Absolutely. Looking sharp, my friend.
Thank you.
And we realized that we had several whiskeys to choose from. It was only appropriate if we're going to play a Scottish game to have a Scotch whiskey prior to. And I learned something today from my mom, Casey. And she said specifically that the game of golf was invented, of course, as we know, by the Scots. And the reason it's 18 holes is because at every single hole, they would take a shot, maybe a nip, if you will, just a wee dram of whiskey. And after 18 shots, the game was over. So they just decided to stop there, 18 holes.
That's amazing.
Now, with this particular
Is that our approach today, Ed?
No, absolutely not. 18 shots of this, and it would be just a really rough back 9. Let's put it that way. So,
why is there an ambulance on the 13th?
Yeah, no. That's the best part about whiskey. Is it can only be enjoyed in moderation. What with the cost? But we planned for it. So we talk a little bit about planning. It's something that we talk about with every single one of our trainees that fly into our offices for long-term training. And of course, we spend a lot of time on it with practices when we travel out to their offices. It's a big topic at our annual training seminar each year, even in just the main session for those that have attended for the very, very first time. But this particular year, we actually highlighted some pretty deep planning at our YT VIP advanced course. So for those of you that aren't too familiar, we've got our main session, and then for return attendees are able to attend the advanced course, which goes from about 200 people all the way down to about 40, 50, 60 people, and then it might be as high as 70 or 80 next year. And then with the most advanced course, for those that are returning for their 3rd, 4th, 5th, beyond, actually have, in addition to some really nice benefits from upgraded hotel rooms and limo transportation and spa credits and things like that at the resort, they have the access to our most intimate, meeting, the most intimate breakout session that we offer, and it's also the most high level. Not just necessarily because it's groundbreaking information of some of the things that we may have formulated, but just sort of more thoughtful approach and also very collaborative approach. So where you've got a nice mix of folks that are surgeons, owners of the practice, high-level administrators, managers of the practices, high-level patient care coordinators, even injectors, people who are, generally more ancillary to the practice from a practitioner standpoint, but are very involved in the planning, particularly on a non-surgical side. All coming together with a particular topic. This year's topic was specifically planning, but much more on a personal level, because I find that the people that are going to be at the highest level of the practice are also going to be hopefully the most ambitious. Hopefully they're going to be the ones that are actually going to take the time to step back, to work a little bit on the business, since they're the ones working the hardest for the business. And there are some things that we went through that really, again, aren't exactly rocket science, but it just takes a little bit of the time and thoughtfulness to be able to sit down. So I selected a book called Extreme Productivity by Robert Posen. It's frankly not the world's greatest read, to be candid with you.
Thanks, Robert.
It's okay. I'm sure he gets this a lot. It's not
We did
exactly
buy probably 50 of your books. It's fine.
Exactly. So
we're allowed to judge as we see fit.
We invested. It's not exactly a scorcher. Okay.
And by the way, I don't want to be disagreeable mid-podcast, but I kind of went into and took some rocket science classes. Relatively simple. So turns out it is rocket science to plan, but the whole time we were wrong about rocket science.
It's actually not that hard. Who
Darndest
knew?
thing.
Who knew?
Yeah.
So we basically took the book as a little bit of a blueprint, and there are some things that probably won't necessarily apply to really a lot of people listening to this or watching this, let alone even attending the seminar, when it comes to how to really travel internationally for business effectively. It sounds great, and of course, a lot of our clients do travel internationally to perform surgery and things like that, and hopefully for vacation. But it's not like everyone's on a bi-weekly leg to Tokyo just because it's just not part of really the
traditional arena that we work in.
The end of the book does give some good topics, particularly when it comes to developing some of your professional skills like speaking and writing and effective reading for comprehension and things like that. But the earliest part is really the most important, and I think the most salient for the topic that we taught, which is really all about the planning, and specifically how to first actually write down a very, very comprehensive list of all the things that you currently do, as well as all the things that you would like to do, just to be able to even be aware of it. Because so many of us are just going with the blinders on, being very reactive versus being proactive, just having to deal with what it takes to run the business.
It's almost the first probably lesson of the book and of planning in general is that you have to make time to even plan.
Exactly.
And I think in a lot of ways it's literally what our seminar is. I think we're entering our 9th year doing it, and we get hopefully a lot of positive feedback on the knowledge people learn and all the other the dinners and how good they taste or whatever. And I think there's certainly value, and that's why we do it, is to teach and educate so people can go back and improve their practices. But I probably get about as many compliments or at least pieces of feedback stating one of the best things about the meeting is just that we were at the meeting, just that more than one of us came. We actually took a little time to think about things, to jot down what Ed said, to read a book, to prepare, to take out a break with the 4 or 5 of us that were there and actually look ahead at 2019 and get a planning meeting on the calendar to begin with, which would be step one, and a big win for probably 80% of the folks listening to this podcast, just to have any planning at all on the schedule, let alone to actually execute it. That might be a year 2 goal. Just put it on there, then ignore it is what I'm saying. Have a meeting, but don't go to it.
That's fine.
This is why Ed's leading this section.
That's all right. It's all right. It's much more sound, particularly after the whiskey. So, to that point, by the way, is so often we talk about it but don't actually plan it. So as a companion to the book, I bundled together a specific blank planner. That's a 6-month planner. And I didn't even realize, by the way, you go to Amazon and Google blank planner. This must be a $1 billion industry because it's unbelievable.
I own blankplanner.org. It's a nonprofit, but gosh, I really missed the boat. I could have made a lot of money.
I'm just happy that you're helping out all those struggling planners.
By the way, selling so much better than completelyfullplanner.com. It's just, I think we've got 2 sales so far, but A lot of good knowledge in those.
That's right, because they are full.
It's just that it's not your schedule.
It's fine. It's all somebody else's life. That's why you get the blank planner. I also got 20 very, very sharp yellow pencils to be handed out. They're number 2 pencils to be handed out to the group. It's better to write in pencil because you do have to give yourself a little bit of that flexibility to write one thing in indelible ink and wish you had an eraser. That much I can tell you. So you go through, you make the list, and then you also commit to being able to plan really even the next 6 months out. Now, obviously, you have to be a little bit flexible. There has to be some fluidity that you have to allow for it for a growing business or growing practice. But just by having the bookmarks of the big things that you know are to be planned, and then allowing yourself to figure out where you're actually going to fit in, how you're going to accomplish the rest of those goals. And even throughout that entire process, mark the things off the list that you should be delegating or not even doing at all, because it doesn't ultimately help you get anywhere closer to that particular goal.
Got it. So if I haven't actually been in this meeting, I can set a time to plan.
Yep.
I can go to Amazon and for $20 or maybe less.
Yeah.
Again, if you get a full planner, it's almost free.
It's from 1979.
It's great. They pay you to just take it. I can get materials that physically help me to plan. And then I can organize into several groups, which you're saying are specific work objectives. Mm-hmm. What else?
Well, they basically they mentioned that you are going to want to put them into personal and professional goals. And because ultimately with the top level performing people, they're obviously going to be somewhat intertwined. Then you're going to prioritize those within primary and secondary from a priority standpoint as far as which ones are going to be that important. So that's the most basic. Obviously, we're not going to go into all the detail that we were able to in a multi-hour breakout session, but that's really the basics.
Love it. And so I think one of the reasons we got excited about this topic for this podcast, because we hadn't done one in a long time, which means we didn't really plan our podcast well. Even we, yes, us.
Can you believe it?
How do I say this humbly? Even we can make mistakes. Occasionally, biannually.
And we're almost always honest about it.
Well, it is interesting though, as a lot of our businesses are growing, knock on wood for now, the economy is growing. It probably won't be by the end of this year.
Hopefully by the end of this podcast.
Yeah. We just had, 15% solve in the markets, and who knows when the next recession is coming. But up to this point here at the end of 2018, as we record heading into 2019, economy's been relatively good. Unemployment's pretty damn low, best in 50 years. Most businesses, not all, but many businesses are growing, and we're no exception. And the reality is anything that doesn't get planned, anything that doesn't make that calendar, one of the things I've noticed is it does not get done. And
for sure,
we were fortunate enough to be full with clients. We were booked out a lot. The seminar sold out, also good.
Yep.
However, the side note of that is we got complacent with doing podcasts. Not because we don't enjoy them, actually. It's one of the fun little outlets we have, but it just doesn't materialize. You have a tendency to settle into a schedule. So planning to plan is so key. But one of the reasons we got so excited about this is not just that we kind of failed to plan certain aspects of our business, but also that Ed's been really diving in on this himself. He's like, if I'm going to teach the darn course again, I got to make sure I live it. So what are some takeaways of what you've done yourself? What have you been up to the last few weeks in planning that could translate maybe to those in a podcast later?
Well, I think part of it was actually finding the time to be able to sort of step away from the business a little bit to think in a little bit more of a macro fashion versus the micro. That's one of the things you were alluding to with the feedback that we get about just going to the YellowTelescope's seminar. And it doesn't have to be our meeting, and if it's your own internal planning meeting, do it offsite, get outside of the business. But maybe even find some time. It's actually a productive way to actually do some work while on a vacation, for example, or on a holiday. If the kids are playing with their new toys after Christmas, take a few minutes, take an hour to actually jot some things down. But even more productively, find like a 2-hour gap where you can literally just allow yourself to think clearly with a blank sheet of paper to just write everything down. For me particularly, I put it into 6 different categories. I made 6 different columns. One was professional, one was health, just general, just lifestyle changes, from an exercise standpoint. And it's, partially the New Year's resolution-y thing, but, I know that that's all going to be entwined into living a healthy lifestyle for me to achieve my goals, as well as travel, something that I have to do often, but also love to do. So I wanted to make sure I outline those things. Also, I put one in there for house and hobbies because my house has been my hobby from a renovation standpoint.
Looks good, by the way.
That. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It's my baby.
I don't know if I like the blackout shades that are electric or the 100-inch screen or the amazing artwork.
Luckily, they're all motorized. Well, not the artwork, but
the artwork is motorized. It's like that's like the was it the Banksy that he shredded?
Oh yes,
yeah. That's the kind of art we make here.
Oh, we love it. Anyway, so putting those all together and then writing them out, and now it allows me to be able to prioritize and start putting them into the calendar, right? And so now I've got several more hours blocked out, even just this weekend, prior to the start of the new year, to make sure that I am 100% lined up for not just the next 3 months, but the next really
so
6 months.
You're moving your tasks after that into the calendar at a specific
Correct.
time, blocking out by the hour, blocking out by the day what will happen.
Correct.
I like it.
And the particular planner that I've got also forces you to find another time to not just do this one big planning, but then sit down, even if it's for 5 minutes at the end of the day before you whatever, take the tie off, play with the kids, whatever you do, take a few minutes to reflect on the day. Furthermore, at the end of the week, prior to the next week, something we've been preaching for a long time, but just is not the easiest habit to always start to do. It's take a few minutes or maybe a half hour on a Sunday prior to the start of the week or when it works for you to actually look at the following week and then do the same thing on a monthly basis. So it really is not just taking the time to plan now, but then planning the additional planning sessions where you're going to keep this and really maintain the habit. And I've thought to myself, it's so often with New Year's resolutions, whether it's exercise or some new habit you want to be able to start, I have to remind myself that it is hard. It's not always easy to change yourself, to change your behavior, to change the way you operate, because I know that in order for me to, even do even nearly as well as I've ever hoped to, I've had to change a lot and create a lot of new habits that just don't come naturally to me like they do to you. So,
was your habit to sleep as late as possible? Because that's something that comes naturally to me.
That's true. That's
I don't ever do it. I don't think I've slept in a month and a half.
Right.
What with the toddler?
What with the toddler?
But it does come natural. I'm excellent at it. I'm one of the best you've ever seen at just getting an extra hour.
That's right. It really just comes natural.
What does that pay these days? Does that pay something?
No. But it pays dividends in your mental health.
Well, what's interesting about the concept of planning is it does actually kind of weed into some of the fun stuff too. So I know that, one of the things that we do is we try to get away in the summer for a pretty good amount of time. I work throughout it, but I try not to plan my work travel around it. So I'll go away for, let's say, a month with my wife and son, and maybe I'll take a 2-week real vacation, but then I'll kind of do other client work from the house during the day the other 2 weeks, but not at least have flights, not have to go out to a client barring an emergency. And so that's something that takes some planning that we build. It probably took me not just the idea to have it and then not to book the flights, but probably took me 3 or 4 years worth of work to be able to have the luxury. Because at first there wasn't enough money, and then there was enough money, but I was too busy and I had too much stuff. Then it was just poorly organized and planned, and so I kind of unraveled that over 3 or 4 years to kind of create a situation where it works. So it's like layers upon layers of planning.
Yep.
Which leads me a little bit into the concept of marketing and the topic of marketing. And the second thing we want to talk a little bit about today is that when most people have their annual planning meetings, if you have an annual planning meeting at the business level, so much of that time goes into really 2 areas, which is usually goal setting, figuring out your numbers, and then usually a lot of things related to marketing, particularly in the medical space, where you might be thinking about, where to invest your money, what your budget should be. Are you doing web marketing? Are you doing print? Are you doing radio? Are you doing social? Are you doing all these different things that you might do? And there's an infinite number of places to invest, and so a lot of it ties to that. And we talk a lot, we preach a lot, especially late summer, about the concept of how everybody feels poor in September and what a hysterical and sort of pathetic joke it is that somehow every winter, right now while you're listening to this podcast, you feel rich, and you're shocked for the 20th year in practice in a row that by August or September you have a slow month. And our joke, of course, is simply to budget and just say, come on, spend the same amount in December as you do in August, because the next December is coming, the next August is coming, and that's just how life works. If you worked in financial services and you got a once-a-year bonus in December, you probably wouldn't spend all of it in January and then not be able to feed your children in September. But that's kind of the way businesses are. Your business is your baby, so you have to plan budget-wise. So as we look at some of the concepts you're talking about at the personal level, planning your own personal 2019, your goals, your personal life, your work life, your travel schedule, your time with children, all the things that are important to you in your life. This, to me, also ties back into marketing the business so that you can have more profit and more freedom to plan your next year. Because that's to me what it's all about. It's ultimately about freedom, the ability to choose what you want to do when you want to do it in a way that helps other people and helps yourself and your family along the way. And that takes planning usually years in advance. So I want to talk a little bit about the idea of budgets and also about 2019 personal and professional planning related to marketing. One of the things that we have noticed is that the approach most practices take is, in our view, an incorrect approach to setting what they call budgets or to figuring out how to spend money. And one of the very core concepts that we believe in is that there is a difference between running a small business and running a medium or large business. And how you define a large business, I might think my business is large, but we're a small business.
Sure.
But when we look at sort of the business definition, you're doing, let's say, under $25 to $50 million a year in revenue, you're a small business. You have under 100 employees. You're kind of a small business versus a publicly traded one. And what happens is we take a lot of our business cues, oftentimes from books, which are often written for the masses that work at Fortune 500s and Fortune 1000s and large corporations that still make up a majority of workers in America. And so we take their cues from that arena the same way most medical practices take their sales cues and marketing cues and education from universities, hospitals, and people who have learned from university and hospitals, which is completely the opposite way that you want to go if you're going to be an effective small business marketer running a plastic surgery practice or dermatology practice or what have you. And so in a similar sort of twist of fate and counterintuitive reality, we learn how to run marketing from and run medical practices from people who don't know how to run a medical practice but know how to do good medicine. And we learn how to do budgets and marketing from corporations that look nothing like us on paper. And so the result is that most clients we speak to talk about budgets. In fact, I was talking with a client this week who shall remain nameless, or not a client, one who won't be a client. And the client has a consultant, and the consultant has never really worked in the space, which is not their fault. I'm sure they're a bright individual, but they come in and they really work with the doctor on what I call all the biz speak, all the terms you hear. And they say, we're getting ready to kind of create buckets and striate our staff and stratify things into compartments and departments. And so we've got a department head now for 6 different sections of the business. And that way we'll be ready to scale as we grow. And then we're going to go ahead and look at the 2019 budget by department. And this sounds really good because it's all business speak. It's all things we read in newspapers and books in the Wall Street Journal, and it sounds wonderful. The one problem is none of it works at all. It's fundamentally incorrect, even though it's intuitive, which is why Yellow Telescope exists, which is to bring counterintuitive ideas to the masses within our industry. And where the disconnect is not with the effort or the idea. The idea sounds good, it's the right effort, it's well-intentioned, but it's a lack of understanding of what we do. And because we are small businesses, we're very nimble. We could change our budget anytime we want. Just like Ed was saying when he was planning, you're going to probably replan every quarter and kind of right the ship because you never know which ways the waves are going to come from. You might even look daily, weekly, or monthly just to kind of say, hey, how am I pacing? Do I need to maybe add or subtract something? We never know what life is going to throw at us, but we can kind of make sure our ship's heading in the right direction and kind of, straighten out that ship from time to time. And because we're nimble, we don't have to make yearly decisions on budget. We may want to plan some out. We may want to say this is the direction we're heading, but setting a budget and then firing teams that don't work or hiring teams that do work or whatever doesn't make, and then reevaluating in a year, well, that may be too long to reevaluate. Someone might be doing terrible for you in 4 months and needs to get fired.
Right.
So what we really want to do when we look at budgets is stop using the word budget. It's hard to do because it's kind of part of the vernacular, but it's not something spectacular.
Start using the word synergy.
I want to go ahead and circle back with you synergistically. We're just touching up a few little odds and ends, just kind of tying a bow on a couple of things before year end. You understand the fiscal responsibility of things, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to skip all of that. When you actually look at budgets, what you want to do is do a review of your profit and loss statement. When you're planning your next year and you have this topic, you should have done this before your annual planning meeting. And you should go in with a very clear list of things that fit the P&L that are cost centers versus profit centers. A cost center is something that if you could find someone else or something else or a different company to do it for cheaper, but it would not affect the result you'd want to do. A good example of that is two effective accountants. If you have an accounting company that does your taxes annually, they effectively give you the deductions that you're entitled to according to the law, and they finish it on time, but one of them is $50 an hour and one of them is $300 an hour. You should get rid of the $300 an hour one and go to the $50 an hour one because it's equally as effective. A profit center would be LeBron James, where the Lakers without him and whatever his salary is would have less tickets sold and win less games, but with him gets more tickets sold and wins more games in a single season, makes them very likely, prediction, a playoff team. Just saw him spank the Golden State Warriors this week.
That's right.
Kawhi Leonard, similarly for the Toronto Raptors. Yes, they're good. They're number one in the East right now. It's sort of amazing to see. So these are profit centers. And on your P&L statement, profit and centers would be those things that if you were to cut them, you'd save some revenue, but you'd lose more in profit. So when you actually look at each line item, you don't want to cut your budget. You want to grow your budget, but by investing and reinvesting in things that have a strong ROI. So a proper small business should not look at annual budgets or buckets or where to spend, but rather say, of the things we're spending on marketing right now, does this individual line item make us money net net? Meaning when you take out, expenses from costs, expenses from revenue, is there profit left over? So for example, we had another doctor who said, John, we're deciding between doing more pay-per-click marketing with our web team and hiring a new person to do sales. And I said, well, I understand that fear. And if you genuinely are such a new practice and such a young practice where your budget literally physically does not permit, where one would put you out of business or into debt,
right,
budgets make sense. But once you're 2, 3, 4 years out, you've got a profitable business. I'm like, well, first of all, let's look at your pay-per-click. And I think we determined as an example that if he was spending $3,000 a month, he needed to sell at least $6,000 in surgery to break even on that,
sure,
assuming 50-50-ish. And when we looked at the numbers, he was making maybe $15,000 a month in surgery. So his net profit was 2 to 4x ROI. So he was making 2 to 4 times in profit what he was spending. So I said, think of them as totally different. You absolutely want to keep your pay-per-click and likely reinvest in it. And not just reinvest, but maybe increase your investment in it. But when you look over here at a new employee to sell it, we should also look at that. And when we looked at that, he had no one selling his non-invasives at all, which is a huge no-no in this market. That's another huge evolution I'll talk about in 2019.
Maybe part 2 of this podcast.
It might be.
Yeah.
He had no patient care coordinator for his non-invasive side, yet had 2 or 3 different providers. And so he said, great, what's the break even on this individual? I think it was a $40,000 to $50,000 salary. Added in FICA, FUTA, SUTA, and taxes, figured out that, and we said, gosh, this person only has to convert this amount, you're leaving this much on the table. And the answer was both, even though at first he said, well, I don't have the budget for both. Well, of course you have the budget for both. You did $1.5 million in sales last year, or $6 million in sales, or $800,000 in sales. You took home $380,000 in profit, or $1 million in profit, or whatever. Yep, you can actually do both, and you should, and spend more if there's ROI. Just like if neither of those things made sense or would make you money, you should cut both. So as we head into 2019 and you're a small business, stop talking about budgets. Start investing in profit centers and things that get you ROI, and then reinvest in them. And if you're not sure which, give us a buzz. We'll help guide you. The help is free. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to add is specifically that so often we speak to clients or potential clients, or maybe as you mentioned, to those that may never be clients. And one of the things that I find to be a major pitfall is it seems so basic, but only focusing on the amount of the dollars. Versus, and I think this is ultimately what you're saying, which is you're talking about the amount of the dollars and what it's actually going to yield you as far as the results. And of course, it does take some analysis and breaking down and tracking and things like that. But we often, the business owners will actually only look at the specific dollars and oh my gosh, if I could just get that $50,000 back, I'd feel so much better. But without thinking or really taking the time to actually think about the consequences of that specific action and eliminating that. Like you said, if you just switch and save thousands of dollars a year because you got the cheaper accounting firm, well, things are still going to get done. That's fine. It's not going to affect you that much if you think about the consequence of that action. But if you just fire your salesperson or cut out all your pay-per-click marketing because it feels good because it's expensive, then you really need to think about what the specific consequences are going to be of that. Yeah. Or when you think
cut your homeowner's insurance too.
Yeah, no problem. It's costly. It's costing me a boatload here, because we're in a hurricane.
And you even have a chance of getting away with it.
Yeah, exactly.
You might.
I just cut out flood insurance.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of times, my wife's been shopping. I got to tell you, love you, babe. She's been going to those Bal Harbor shops up in Miami. So, what's great is you just get divorced and then you don't have to pay for all that.
That's right.
And you just lose 50-60% on the way out plus legal fees. So that's why. But then you're not spending
on all those
the shoes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love you. Happily married. We're almost 18 years. 10 years of marriage.
Also look at certain things, like if I was talking to a particular client, I'm just going to quickly change the subject. Back to the fact that when it talking about reinvesting in those things, look at your people, look at your profit centers, and it's always, we know the two biggest expenditures are going to be your people and your marketing.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have the right people and the right processes and training that goes into that, and then you can get in the leads that they actually need to be able to convert.
Absolutely. And that leads to kind of the last kind of topic I want to touch on as far as really marketing, planning to marketing with a plan. And we've talked about kind of just being careful about the idea of a budget, the idea of making cuts for cut's sake. And then the second question is, well, what is worth doing in 2009? What has evolved since our last podcast? We really were, some years, I'm certainly one of those people who preach that some years there isn't necessarily, anything new.
Some quantum leap.
Yeah, some years just are kind of, it's about the same, maybe a couple tweaks. This has definitely been another year, just like last year with the growth of social media sort of broadly. I guess 2 years ago, we talked about how social media had become the next new thing, not just in terms of posting general calendars, but just the idea that it could start to be monetized and making money.
Yep.
We now have, I believe, dozens of clients in our social media group,
yep.
And I would argue that within a few months, 100% of them can show demonstrable leads. When you look at just basic national averages, show profitability on the investment in social media, and not just this pie in the sky. We got a lot of impressions, but again, real leads, real people buying surgery, buying non-invasives through social media.
And that's just on the organic side.
Correct. That's literally just creating calendars and posting to Instagram or Facebook through a professional organization that knows what they're doing. There aren't any really, but we're one. But in addition to that, there have been a few other evolutions. So I think just as a few takeaways, start thinking about, if you're out there in podcast land, as far as what should I be thinking about as I head into 2019 as potential new investments. Now, again, we teach, in fact, we gave a speech, 3 different meetings in different formats called basically the marketing ladder,
yep.
which are the steps you take in the order you take. We may have had a podcast in it. So some of these steps may not make sense for your practice today, but you can either reach out to us to see what order you should go in, or just take a stab at it if it interests you. And a few things that are evolving. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, I believe probably in the next podcast or the podcast after, is the evolution in 2019 of the non-invasive, non-surgical patient care coordinator. For so many years, including me when I entered the industry, there was this sort of concept that, surgery is where the money's at. I worked for a surgeon, and my surgeon used to say, hey, if there was some replacement for surgery, I'd be out of business. So surgery is where it's at. Nothing's going to replace the power of my hands. And that was really true back at that point because there's so few non-invasives out there. There's maybe like a little Botox, like maybe, I don't even know if CoolSculpt was out then.
Nope.
There really wasn't a lot out. And now as you fast forward, because of both the technology improving, the variety of things that are out there, and the acceptability of speaking openly about these things, it's really come along. And so we've now started to work and staff specifically med spa managers, med spa patient care coordinator salespeople, non-invasive within a medical practice. If you already have a surgical practice and you want to add in or grow your non-surgical side, if you have nurse injectors, if the doctor's doing the injectables, if you have laser skin resurfacing, you got esthetician services,
yep. Skincare,
you're doing cool sculpting, M-sculpting, skincare, lasers, etc. We've been staffing, training, and overseeing in a Yellow Telescope fashion that exact position, and our results, they're arguably on average as good or better than our surgical practice results in terms of booking percentages and immediate growth out of the starting gates for, knock on wood, nearly all, if not all of our clients so far. A second idea for evolution 2019, so that's part of the marketing budget, which there is no budget, but it's some of the things you should be investing in the marketing side of the business. The second thing is definitely not just the continued evolution of social media, which is moving from base 1 to kind of base camp 2 on the way up Kilimanjaro or Everest, but also the creation and growth of Facebook, Instagram, and other sponsored posts or paid social media advertising, which is literally the creation of ads that go into your Instagram or Facebook feed. If you open your phone right now, open your Facebook or Instagram, the first, second, third, or fourth post will say sponsored. Mm-hmm. And it's basically like Google AdWords. It's like what your web or SEO team does, only it's done by your social media firm, or reach out to us if you want. and we can do it for you, but it's really grown, and we're getting massive results for the majority of clients now, where it used to be sort of this afterthought. The price per click's relatively cheap.
Yep.
It's really low risk in terms of spend. We have a client right now in the last, from Thursday to Monday of this last week, got 10, if memory serves, 10 liposuction leads from Instagram. We've got successful body tight and face tight campaigns going, really successful lip filler, lip injectable campaigns going, really working. It's a new idea for 2019, and it's relatively cheap. Almost nobody's doing it, and you get way ahead. So if you're smart enough to be listening to this podcast, whether you use us or not, which you kind of need to, there's just no one doing, in our view, what we're doing right now, not to be too pluggy, but you got to get on this thing and get way ahead, because it's not going to be as cheap in 3 years. You're at the bleeding edge right now,
That's right.
And we've figured out how to monetize it.
Well, that's it. It's a much more nuanced in a lot of ways. We do have even that much more control of the specific demographics, the specific targeted people, and hate it or love it, about the data collection of social media. But we've all agreed to be on it. We've all agreed to give them a certain amount of data, and the reality is it's still usable. And in a lot of ways, if you really do believe that your product or service is going to help the potential viewers of those leads, don't feel bad about targeting them, because they're going to go somewhere, right? Just like we say, help them pick your practice no matter what. Furthermore, it's often even much better than, say, your organic leads, where we will absolutely count somebody who comments or direct messages you saying, how much does this cost, by the way, as a lead, right? Whereas often this is a specific form fill with direct contact information specifically being asked to call this person, just like as if it was coming to your website.
Yeah, it's a true lead.
Yeah.
And it's really been effective, and the normalcy, the acceptability of selecting and purchasing products and services through social media is growing. We can do YouTube videos now that are paid and sponsored to get thousands, if not millions of views. LinkedIn marketing, which is, again, my favorite social media source, and I use it. The people who use it love it, the same way the president loves Twitter. Like him or hate him, he loves Twitter. And
that much we know.
Yeah, that much we know. And similarly, like me or don't like me, I like LinkedIn, and I'm active on it. And so people who are on it, people are marketing through LinkedIn and targeting. And because, unlike Google AdWords, which tends to be more expensive, although very effective for the right clients, almost all clients in many cases, that's for people that are searching for something. But what if you don't know M-Sculpt exists? What if you don't know that NeoGraft does hair restoration? What if you don't know about the newest products like Volbella or Voluma or whatever the fancy new thing is that's out? Well, how do you get that in there? Well, how do you get that in front of the eyes of the consumer? Well, what we're able to do is we can geo-target. We could say anyone within a 4-mile radius of your office. If you're doing a facelift campaign, we make it only women if you want it, or only men between the ages of 48 and 72 with the top 25% income in their market. So it's highly targeted, so anyone who's seeing it is exactly who you want to see it. In fact, it's what Zuckerberg over at Facebook got in trouble for, because Facebook owns Instagram and they both use the same platform. And as much as we may dislike the big brother nature of stealing all of our information, the reality is that's what marketers in essence do, and it's what they will always do. And one of the advantages to the person marketing to the consumer is we can say, we're going to go ahead and find every 16 to 22-year-old woman for a rhinoplasty campaign in the market. So it's fascinating stuff, and it's a big evolution. So continued social media, continued evolution of social media paid ads, the idea of a non-invasive patient care coordinator. The first 20 dermatologists to call us would be the smartest 20 dermatologists to fill those positions. It's still not even thought of as a thing in that industry. They haven't even crossed their mind that these cosmetic derms do as much filler and Botox and lasers and everything else as the plastic surgeons do. Plastic surgeons have been doing this for a decade. So those are a few things on the evolution. I don't know if there's much beyond that. My personal prediction is that the economy is going to slow slowly but surely over the next couple of years. Getting growth will become a little bit more difficult. The unemployment rate will kind of bottom out here shortly as its lowest rate and get a little worse. But we've got a good solid year or two of probably pretty good times ahead of us. May extend, may not. And so the reality is these are the good old days. The sun is shining, got to make hay, and other cliches and analogies. And those are just a few things we're seeing for the evolution of 2019.
Well, and I think that's also why it's that much more important that you actually do have the plan in place, right? It's often, for example, we have a long-term agreement through Yellow Telescope, right? It's been, worked extremely well, and reach out to us if you want to know all the reasons why it's as long as it is. But sometimes we get the question from somebody who's thinking about hiring us that says, well, gosh, what if there's a recession? What if the economy goes in the tank, right? Well, of course, we can...
Which is all going to happen.
It's going to happen 100%. We know it will. Maybe it's it's next month, maybe it's in 5 years. We don't know exactly when, but as you mentioned, there's probably going to be some softening that's going to continue.
And if you thought that in 2009, you've been waiting now 10 or 11 years for that to happen.
Exactly. And so it sometimes feels like, well, then I won't be able to spend any money. Well, part of what I say is that, not only is it going to be that much more important to have your plan in place, and it does make it that much more important to then have the right staff, have the right support, have the right marketing in place so that you actually have got yourself well positioned with a good foundation to be able to weather whatever storm might be coming. And having that plan in place now when times are good, when you do feel comfortable and you can think a little bit more broadly because things are so good, makes it that much more important.
Absolutely. In the worst economic downturn in our lifetimes, in most people's lifetimes since the Great Depression in 2008, the practice I worked at was evened up that year.
I worked there too. I remember that.
Darndest thing. And I'd like to give us all the credit, but it wasn't. It was maybe somewhat us, good people.
I'm going to take all the credit.
Absolutely. It's 100% Ed. Ed solves economies.
No. I had a small contribution.
How's your economy? Let me go ahead and fix that for you. Bring it over here. Bring it over here. And you're all set. Have a good day, man.
Just wave the wand.
But what was interesting is we didn't know that was coming. No one could have predicted it, but we didn't expect it to keep going up forever. And we had, when we joined the practice, felt that it was too heavily based on discounting. Every procedure, we'd wheel and deal, and the practice manager at the time kind of sold based on discounting, and there's nothing wrong with that. They were growing and doing well, actually, in spite of it, and so there's some argument to keep doing it. But one of the things that we identified was we need to plan to decide, are we always going to be a discount practice, or are we going to build based on the quality of our doctor, who was superb, and the quality of our service, which I thought was excellent as well, and build a lasting business that sold based on the quality of the product and the service. And that was about a 2-year project just to get to the point where patients didn't call in and constantly say, well, Barbara got half off, Barbara got 20% off, Barbara got this, I want it too. And it was tough, and we had to say no to a lot of people, but we invested in marketing so that people who didn't want to spend more money would go away. We would lose their business in return for getting more high-end patients. The high-end patients referred more high-end patients. Those high-end patients, when everyone else got poor, got less rich. Not fair, not good, but life. And when that happened, the people who had 30 million in the bank had 20 million in the bank, and it was tough, but they kept spending. And those who had good middle income jobs still were the kinds of individuals that were wired to spend for quality when it came to having their body cut open, which I'm one of those people. Call me a sucker, but that's just, I'm going to spend a little more to have, the right Botox or the right procedure done. And so we didn't have our best year ever, but we had a good year. So it's all planning. And you guys should be thinking about your evolution in 2019 and making hay while the sun shines, because time is limited. Ready for a couple of announcements?
Speaking of limited time.
Well, with that, a couple of things on my list for those of you guys going to ASAP's this year. ASAP's taking place in
NOLA,
New Orleans, Louisiana.
That's right.
I've only been there 406 times. Shoot us an email.
Make it 407.
Yeah. Shoot us an email, info@YellowTelescope.com, if you'd like to join us for a drink or a bite to eat. We do have a sort of famous dinners, and New Orleans being my favorite city in America, we're going to do it very, very, very well. It's going to be great. So we're going to be speaking there. If you're attending ASAP's, please join us. Come see us speak. Come by our booth or booths. I think we'll have a booth or two at that event.
Booths.
We're excited to be invited back. Thank you to the ASAP's crew. We'll also be at ASPS Aesthetica, which is actually, there's no reboot camp for those guys who are at boot camp the last 2 or 3 years. I think that's been discontinued. They're combining it with Aesthetica. So we're excited to head back to that event for, I think, the 4th year in a row, and that's going to be in San Diego.
San Diego.
Very exciting. We also have already outsold this last year's Yellow Telescope seminar with, I guess, 10 months left to go. The next Yellow Telescope seminar, although it's a ways away, listen as to why you want to hear the following sentences. Listen as to why. That was not English, which is fine. I do one of those every podcast, and there you go. We leave it in because
we never edit.
It's got authenticity. So, in any case, the Yellow Telescope seminar is October 25th, 26th. A couple of new announcements. One, this year for the first time ever, we always include 2 nights in a hotel room for free. We did the Fontainebleau this year, Mandarin Oriental the year before. This year we're including the 3rd night at no additional charge. So you'll actually be able to make a nice long weekend out of it. Arrive Thursday, leave Sunday, 2 days of meetings on Friday and Saturday. We're finalizing the location. The front runner is the Mandarin Oriental in Miami right now, but we'll see soon. We've already outsold. We had about 150, 200 people in the room this year. We've already outsold that number for next year. Why would anyone sign up for a meeting 10 or 11 months in advance? Well, if you contact us now, you save money. It's cheaper to sign up earlier. We give you an early bird discount. Number 2, you can break it into monthly payments, 10 of them right now, probably be 9, then 8, etc. cetera, over the next few months with no interest. You can cancel until 45 days prior, so you take no risk whatsoever in joining us. Very worst case, call us up if you have a wedding that weekend, cancel. You can add or subtract names if Susie Q quits or is fired, et cetera, et cetera. So sign up now, decide later if you can make it. It's a great event. It's our Soul on a Plate. It's our 9th year.
What happens if they attend and it's not the best meeting they've ever attended, though?
I don't know, Ed. What happens?
We give all the money back.
Simple as that, 100% guarantee. We did get a 9.68 out of 10 based on anonymous reviews, tying our best year ever to the 1/100th of a percent. So it's great. We love it. Appreciate all those people who came out this year. Excited to do it again next year. Everything's included: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack break, cocktail hour, whiskey tastings, and everything else in between, plus some great education. Other than those meetings, it's been a great year. What do we have coming up? I know we're going to San Diego and New Orleans.
San Diego, New Orleans, several client trips coming up. We're launching a full plate of clients through a Yellow Telescope long-term throughout the first and into the second quarter of this year. We've got Hawaii, Houston. We've got New York City.
The Jewel of Charlotte.
The Jewel of Charlotte.
Going back to Charlotte, new client there. Very excited.
That's right.
Denver.
Denver, that's right. Get a little skiing in.
Yeah, a little pleasure followed by a little business.
That's right. It's kind of how we do it. Today was a little business followed by a little pleasure.
And New York City, do we mention? We're heading there.
Uh-huh.
So if you're going to be in any of those, if you live in any of those, you want to hang out with us, shoot us an email. Maybe we can catch you for a few minutes. And,
let's connect.
We're excited. Other than that, wanted to thank everybody out there for, and again, another great year on behalf of the Ice Cream social media team and the SE Oversight team. And, of course, who, by the way, were named a technology finalists of the year by the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. You had another, that was actually almost where we got second place, I think, for that, or third.
But we were finalists.
But that was exciting.
Yes.
It's been a great year. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you for all you've done.
Let's celebrate with 18 very short holes.
Yes. Several sleeves of balls in the drink.
Yeah. Well, I did give you a bigger pour than me, so I think I'm due for another.
Apparently. Have a great year, everybody. We can't wait to celebrate with you soon. Thanks for having us. Oh, and one of my favorite quotes of all time, I think, was on our Real Self webinar, where John Hoffenberg says,
insightcenter.realself.com.
That's right. We, like clockwork, record a podcast every 1 month to 1 year.
We did it. That's honesty.
See you next time. Play us out, Jill.